And so here it is on the 26th, I believe, of February, and I am sort of excited and stoked to amp up my coverage of the Iditarod sled dog race this year. And following the Yukon Quest, I thought it was nice on one hand to see Brent win. I remarked to myself that I thought the lack of competition, there being only like 10 teams in the race, it feels like and it's been said millions of times, but the political and economic stuff that's going on, Hugh Neff wasn't in the race. The European Canadian contingent was Willemser, it was Cleedon, it was Sebastian Schneuli, it was Thomas Tetz back in the day when I was really following the race, and even when I ran it, none of those guys are really there. That one lady who came in second, I can't even remember her name, and that's really what I'm talking about. Like, are there good articles about these competitors? Is there information about their training regime and their breeding program? Is there the same excitement level? Maybe it's because I'm not following it as much, but I don't really think that the coverage was there either in terms of the newspaper reporters, and maybe there just isn't a story, and maybe that's what's happened with the competition. It's basically winnowed out the people who are remarkable and interesting enough to generate storylines, and it's basically got these people who are just like school kids who fall in a line and don't look to the left or don't look to the right, and just and the race organization selects in the race community selects for those type of competitors with the Yukon Quest. So I think it's sort of tragic with the lack of the competition in the Quest, and I think it's it's bad for the sport of dog racing. It's sort of bad for what the race was all about. Now, flipping forward to the Iditarod, this year, Kaiser is looking strong. There's Matt Failure. There's a big contingent of people who are positioned to do well. So there's quite a bit more depth in terms of that competitive field in the Iditarod. There's some Europeans who are from Europe, and there's some Europeans who are training in Alaska. The guy who won it, I can't remember his name, I think it's just, and then there's Nick Petit. Is Nick Petit this year going to be able to? And I think that's a real story that's going to be fun to watch. He clearly has a dog team that has dominance in the mid-distance races, has the athletic capabilities. He seems to be having them peak where he's out there on the sled, and he's having problems on the coast. You know what I mean? Is this going to be his year to get a victory? Is he going to be able to be patient? Did he run those dogs competitively too much in those early preliminary races like the Kuskokwim, the Copper Basin, the Klondike, etc.? He's won a couple of them. He's done that several years in a row, and he's a guy who I think I sort of have hopes for him. I would like to see him win the race if I was going to pick someone who I would like to see win the race, because I think he's been knocking on the doorstep, and people are, and I would hate to have him have another problem like he's had a couple years now on the coast. So I hope he's done the preparation, the homework, and I think last year he was out there training on the coast to position himself to clinch a victory. You know what I mean? And I think it's also really sad, though, and what I was commenting on with the Yukon Quest and sort of the economic and the political overtones and sort of the popularity contest, and how the kids are all just the ones in the row who don't say anything or do anything, and it gets back into the what's going on with the Iditarod. Now, Dallas Seavey's not in the competition. He hasn't been in a couple of years. We've got Kaiser winning last year. Again, that European guy, can't remember his name, and that's sort of what I'm talking about. Are these remarkable competitors? You know what I mean? And the European guy was training Willow or whatever. Don't even remember his name. Sort of like the lady who came second in the Quest this year. I can't even remember. It doesn't resonate enough with me. There's not a storyline. There's not a character there that I want to engage with and follow. There's not enough media around some of these people who are putting together competitive finishes, and so those are some things that I think. But Dallas EV is there. Would Kaiser have won? If Dallas had been competing, and this is sort of some of the stuff we're getting into when we're following these races, and the overtones of, that drug thing in 2017, and how there was sort of still some big question marks on the race organization. There's been a restructuring of the Iditarod Trail Sled Dog Race organization. Board of directors, there's quite a few new faces in terms of the actual staff of the Iditarod Trail Sled Dog Race. In terms of the nonprofit, we've got a new CEO, Rob Urbach. He's made an effort. He's reached out to PETA, the organization that is ethical treatment of animals, that has been doing a lot of aggressive campaigning for decades against the sled dog race, and I thought it was sort of odd that Jeff King went along. Jeff King tagged along with that outreach to PETA. I thought that was a mistake. I don't think King is really the right guy to be. He's a guy who's had poaching problems in Denali. I think he's definitely a guy who's had a lot of longevity in terms of a successful career of dog mushing. He's also had a great economic base with his tourist operation to support that longevity in his sled dog racing. And I don't think I'm not trying to say Jeff King's a bad guy, but I think if Rob Urbach had tried to reach out to PETA, I think he should have. I think he should have done it probably on his own or with other race organization staff. And I worry about the lines getting crossed with their competitors in the race organization. Also, we see Jeff King leading up to this year's race. He's on Facebook. He's exchanging some mitts with Stu Nelson, who is the chief veterinarian of the sled dog race. He's been doing it for years, and like I've said a couple times, I think positions like that and the race marshal Mark Norman have been doing it for years. The potential for the economic political corruption, restructuring it more like a elected official, 2 to 4 years or something like that, and then rotating those people out so that someone's not giving them gifts, someone's not doing an undisclosed land deal like Jeff has done with Mark Norman up there in Denali Park, selling a lot. Maybe he got $20,000 off for the lot. He's probably gonna, if Jeff King whispers in his ear, he's probably going to heed those words that are whispered in his ear, and he's probably going to act on those, whether it's to withdraw princess for an iPod, whether it's doing something to mush or X or Y, or on issue X or Y. Those sort of issues in terms of I feel like the competitors should be distant. They can be cordial and polite, but I don't think the competitors should be in business relationships with those race organization officials and staff, and even the board of directors too. So I think it becomes a conflict of interest where the objectivity and the consistency of application of rules towards the competitors from the race organization over time it erodes, and you lose sight of. It's like you're trying to pick up a package at the post office. Your car's getting worked out at a shop. Does it become a competition for everyone to bring flowers to the person at the post office, or to go and leave a 6-pack of beer for the guy at the shop, or even expanding upon those analogies. You look at the Senator's Ted Stevens. He had the guy executive for Vico, putting thousands of dollars in improvements on his house. And, is he basically getting bribed? You know what I mean? So those are all issues. I think that circling back to the Yukon Quest in my comments about how I feel like it's just about the kids in the line and everyone who's unique and is remarkable. It's got a storyline and is interesting. It's basically been winnowed out of the competition. You only got 10 people. I would hate to have the Iditarod Trail sled dog race continue down the path it's going and be in a similar situation to the Quest, where you see just the shrinking numbers of the competitors and again, circling back towards that gag rule where they don't even want the competitors to talk about race issues, etc. But I do think that the Iditarod, I can see I got a bow, I got a rifle here, and I think the Iditarod is a great thing because it in the dog mushing is a great thing because it reconnects towards that living off the land. And going back to Joe Senior, it was an effort 30-40 years ago about being out on the land and honoring and commemorating and memorializing the subsistence aspects, living off the land stuff. So the dog mushing is not an all bad thing. I think that the racing and the way that the race organizations are structured for these big ones, these long distance ones, where, to be fair, there's a tremendous amount of money and sponsorship opportunities, and so it's not just like the smaller races where there's not as much at stake. I think that those races are it's tough because it's just not, it's no longer a good there's no longer that good sense of objectivity, I think. And I don't know, those were some things that I thought I would just put out there leading up into the race. I think it's going to be a fun race. I think is Dallas Evie going to be commenting out there somewhere? Is it going to be Heister and Bruce Lee again? Have we heard enough from Heister and Bruce Lee? Maybe at some point I should be up there on a snow machine out there providing coverage. The other issue, really quick, that I thought was big last year was the issue of outside assistance. I think the Blair Braverman thing was huge, and the snow machine with her spouse, she was shut down for like 20 hours between Caltech and Unilink Fleet, was with her at Tripod, was with her at Old Woman, two different cabins that are not checkpoints. We've gone over this. We've beaten this thing to death. I have on the one dog class, etc. And I don't have a burning desire to to try to make Blair look bad, but I do think it was an issue. And I think there was other competitors with their spouses also last year where it was something, specifically I think it was Andy Poole in the Barrington where he was kneeling on the straw on the checkpoints. And the officials weren't there to watch it. Beyond just the moral support, blah 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 blah. Are you actually potentially exchanging something? And I think it really gets into a line where you're beginning to infringe upon the respect for that sort of history, and the meaning and the respect for what the race was always supposed to be about, which was a wilderness race, which was a race that was honoring that self-sufficiency, that independence, that being able to do this shit yourself and not having everyone out there. Now, I think to be fair to like Christine to Blair, that they probably were happy to see their spouses out there, but the spouses were the ones, it was like a little league parent or something who were over the top trying to be out there, and you're working with the person all year, so it's like you don't want to say no, leave me alone. But I mean, I think they almost that's why I think an official needs to step in and be able to say no, you need to step back. These guys are in this race. This is a race, and they need to be able to race and train their dogs. I mean, they need to be able to run the race in a way aligned towards that purpose in the rules of the race, which is without the outside assistance, if that makes sense. So I do feel like the officials last year sort of dropped the ball and weren't able to enforce the rules. You know what I mean? And I think, not certain. I never said, I thought Blair should have got kicked out or Christie or blah blah blah. But I do think, some sort of a light penalty, a couple $100 or something like that, and so that there's a notation, so that if they do this again, so if next year Blair's spouse or next year Christie's spouse is out there sort of towing that line too much, we know that they've done this in the past, and we can say, hey, we've already said something to you about this. We don't want you to do this again. So I think that the race marshal and the race organization last year, again, I think they dropped the ball. There should have been some consequences last year, and I think I think the Life Below Zero team, Jesse Holmes, I think that there's rumbles in the background about the snow machines out there in filming with his group too, and I think several other mushers over the years, over the last several decades of the racing with the iditarod, there's always been a maybe not every year, but every few years, there's probably some sort of a conflict of interest like that between people who are media or people who are just excited about the race and connected to the teams and their support and they're trying to tell the story, and the actual teams and trying to get the teams down the trail, the mushers and the teams down the trail. So, it's, and that's why a lot of the reporters from Anchorage and from the media sources are on planes, not on snow machines, because snow machines can damage the trail. Snow machines can, impact and interrelate with the teams. And that goes back to also Sebastian Schnull was out there a few years on snow machines, and he was right on the coast, between the checkpoints. It's sort of funny, right with the teams. And I thought it was inappropriate a couple times because he's like maybe telling them where the other guys are and stuff like that, and in between the checkpoints, they shouldn't be having that information. The mushers should be on their own. They should be using their instincts. They should be, with their head down. They should be racing, and they should be dealing with their own dogs, and they shouldn't be getting, they shouldn't be even seeing someone out there. It's the wilderness stuff, and that's really what I want to talk to. Circling back, Yukon Quest too. I feel like there was sort of this overtone where is it like, are these like outside rich social media mushers? I'm not trying to pick on Blair or pick on Brent, but Brent was the year I ran the Quest back in '7. His first year, he had a plane, he had a huge social media following. I didn't even have a Facebook for years, for then or for years after. You know what I mean? So it's sort of a different generation. Brent's even older than me, but you know what I mean? I feel like, other people have said this too, is that just like, are they Facebook musher or is it a Twitter musher for Blair? And they have this huge support and they've got money. And so are the rules, and because is this a popularity contest or is this like a sled dog race with rules that need to be enforced? So, I think those are some big question marks for the future of the race. And I think it's okay to ask, it's okay to put those issues out there and not say we're trying to pick on these individuals. But I think that at some point the race organization and, in terms of trying to regulate the media and the mushers' own media that's following the race and their own support teams that are following the race, who in some instances are actually like spouses who work with the dogs and stuff like that, to try to regulate that a little bit better is something that I think might clean up the race and stuff, because I really don't think it should be a dog washing race. It shouldn't be like a popularity contest, and on the other hand, it shouldn't be a contest with people who are like the kids in the line who don't say anything or you don't raise an issue or anything like that, and just like the good kids in class, so to speak. And I think it's okay to have someone who's sort of a character like a Hugh Neff. I think it's okay to have some more dynamic figures in the sport of mushing. And I think that those were the best years back when it was like Swenson and Butcher, and back when it was like Doug Swingley. I feel like this year I don't see like everyone's just a nice guy. Kaiser, the European guy, I can't remember his name. It's like everyone's just a nice, and not just a nice guy, but everyone's just like there's no struggle. There's no, these everyone's got their sponsors. They've got tons of money. They bought the ducks. There's no story. It's nice with Lance, but Lance again, Lance, his dad, his brother won it. You did feel he was an Alaskan character. Do you know what I mean? There was a sense of a working class. There was a sense of, but also tied to that history. So it was nice when Lance was winning, and because he was sort of. But again, is this a political thing? Is winning the Iditarod stuff, is it a political thing, or is it a sporting event and a contest where it's not about who a popularity thing? And again, so that ties back. Even though Lance wasn't really a social media figure with Facebook and Twitter, in the news structures and stuff, and in the political landscape of Alaska, economic landscape of Alaska, it's interesting because he was sort of like a sort of a popularity. He was sort of a popular figure because he sort of appealed to everyone's, the connection to the sport, the history, the working class, and the surviving cancer and the struggle and stuff like that. And he really, and the sheer number of victories that he had and the dominance that he had during that era. So that was another character that I thought he was a dynamic. Iditarod champion, a dynamic Yukon Quest champion, and it was fun to follow his success in the sport. So and I'm just trying to say, like, is Jorian, whatever it is, the European guy, is Kaiser, is Matt Fowler, are these guys, is Brent Sass, is the woman who was second in the Quest this year, are these people these type of champions? Are these people these type of competitors? Or are they just like the kids waiting in line and they're going to get the win one too? You know what I mean? Is this just like kids waiting patiently in line? They're going to get one. They got their money. So to me, I feel like I just feel like the storylines and stuff, I think that's sort of an interesting thing. So circling back to all this, I feel like Petit's had some struggle. Nick Petit's had some struggle a couple years now. It hasn't been perfect for him. He hasn't just bought it. He hasn't been simple. He's been consistently winning the mid distance races. He is the guy who I would like to see get a championship this year. And it's a big question mark. Will he fall apart? Will he win? So that's sort of an interesting competitor. There's some. It's not all guaranteed. It's not like someone who's just consistently in the top five, always finishing. No, there's a drama there. But I also feel like circling back to what happened last year. There was Dee Dee out there, and she was physically went to the cabin and stuff like that. You're hugging him at the checkpoint, and I think the officials need to make sure that the competitors, when they're mushing out there on those races, they have a little bit of space and a little bit of a bubble where a media person or a past competitor or a spouse or anyone else is not crossing that line to where they are either helping or whether they are psychologically providing support or psychologically not providing support, and psyching someone out or just interacting with someone where they really honestly should be able to have sort of a little bubble to focus on their race and their dogs, just like if you're an NBA player, the people who are spectating or on the other side of the thing, and the NBA players are there with the other players and their coach or whatever. So I think that the Iditarod really needs to have it be like the dog mushers and the officials and the other people. They can be on the other side of the line and that kind of thing. There needs to be some respect and boundaries there. And I think in terms of the social media people on the Facebook and the Twitter and the spouses on the trail, and so I think that that's something that the officials really need to crack down on. It's going to be an interesting to see if they can pull that off in light of the fact that a lot of times the big social media people are the people who are bringing interest to the race. You don't want to shut that down, but then also they just have tons of money, so you don't want to kick the people out of tons of money. But at the same time, this isn't a popularity contest. This isn't a who's got the most money contest. This is a dog race from point A to point B. Even though the popularity and the money is, a lot of what goes on before the race starts and after the race ends, leading up to the race in terms of putting things together. But it really should be about during the race, when it goes from Anchorage to Nome or from Willow to Nome, it should be about the musher and the dogs, and there shouldn't be other people, giving information on the trail, providing support on the trail, following along with the snow machine and meeting mushers, like happened with Quincy and Blair last year twice. There shouldn't be Andy Poole, there shouldn't be Cale Casey out there, talking to mushers. And I felt like it was really, really interesting. And this is the one issue I wanted to talk about actually. So last year I thought it was sort of the apex of like the crossroads of north, south, west, east, where you could see how the social media thing has just destroyed the wilderness, and that's what I was saying. Like, is it the rich kids from the lower 48 have destroyed the wilderness of Alaska? But it's like when Kale Casey was at like Old Woman Cabin, he was picking up the girl who ran the Montana guys' dogs. The you know, I don't remember her name is Maxwell. Emily Maxwell ran some team at the last minute. She didn't even train them last year. Ski legs at Montana, the yearling team, and she was scratching out by Nikolai in Roan or something like that. I don't know where she was. And so Kale Casey, Eddie Pohl went back. They weren't even working for the race, but they're commandeered by Mark Nordman. So they're following on their snow machines. And Kale Casey's there with his Facebook Live, and he's interviewing Blair Braverman in the middle of nowhere. He shouldn't have been there. So it's not just Quincy. He shouldn't have been there, I think, picking up the team or whatever. And he's on his video, and he's sort of inappropriate. I thought it was inappropriate to Blair. Kale being inappropriate to Blair in terms of just videoing her and she's sort of in a place that should be a wilderness location in the race where she should be with three other teams and her dogs. And I don't think the media people should be interviewing, videoing, and filming really like the way Kale was doing it. The mushers when they're shut down between checkpoints, and especially what I mean. I think the wilderness aspects of the sport are sort of at stake in Alaska too. So I think that was an interesting moment where they're just like Kale and Blair and everything that they're doing. Like Blair is almost caught in the crosshairs of the shit that she's been doing herself with Kale, and Kale wasn't even intending to be there because Nordman was the one who sent it back. So you know what I mean. So there's a lot of context there. I'm not trying to again say these guys were bad, but I think that that's sort of an interesting moment where we wanted this race, and the purpose of the race was it was a wilderness race. It wasn't a race with support and media in between checkpoints. So I think the media needs to respect that, and during the race they can interact with the mushers at the checkpoints, but not in between. You know what I mean? So that's sort of a theme that I think the last several years is becoming more and more conflicts like that in terms of the rules of the race, the intention of the race, and what's been actually going on.